Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bean Talk. It's A-Lad,
It's linen.
and I know we promised you guys that we were gonna have the Madden ratings episode and all that, but unfortunately, that won't be coming to you, at least not now. Uh, we have to postpone it for a little bit. I have been visibly frustrated with Madden. I don't know if y'all have been playing the new game. It has been a little frustrating. I think the ratings have played a factor in that. I know Lenny can attest to that a little bit, but we're just going to go ahead and get into the college football previews because actually we got the season coming up. When we're recording this, actually, it's the night before all the goodness starts. We got Ohio State, Indiana tomorrow night, actually, so we're pretty amped
Mm-hmm.
up. We're pretty excited. So we
It's
wanted to,
Christmas Eve.
yeah, it's Christmas Eve. It really is. Honestly, football is finally back, guys. I don't know if you guys are excited as we are, but I know I'm ready to just sit back, relax, watch that stuff, and then be able to kind of dissect it and talk to you guys about it. So we're just gonna go ahead and get right into it. Um, Lennon, just go ahead and kind of preface like what we kind of expect from this year in college football.
So this year we think be a little interesting. We think the college football landscape this year is really top heavy. We think there are a lot of really good teams out there, and we honestly expect a lot of really good records and a lot of bad records. We expect the teams who are good are far superior than most and are going to beat them in not as many huge upsets. And that's just what I see. I see a lot of double-digit win teams, more than the four playoff spots, and it'll be a very interesting year to see how all that works in with the playoffs and who gets in, who's left out. And I'm excited. I know I'm a little more excited than A-Lad. He's the more NFL guy. I'm the more college guy, but I know. I can't wait. Can't wait to get ready and start watching it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm excited to just watch football. I
Yeah.
happen to be more in the NFL realm. Lenny's more the master of the college realm. So let's go ahead and get right into it. We just wanted to kind of start off talking about the conference champions. We're gonna do the Power Five. I mean, if any of you guys out there are like Florida Atlantic or like Georgia State fans or something like that, I'm sorry. Like I'm not gonna. We're not gonna be talking about that. We're just gonna talk about the nitty gritty, the meat of college football, the powerhouses. Um, so let's just go ahead and let's start in. You want to start in the SEC?
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, we're both SEC country. At least I am more than you are. You all
Uh,
claim to be SEC country, but you aren't really
well,
SEC country.
well, I'm ACC country, buddy. So
Oh,
don't
yeah.
forget that.
All right. So, um, I don't know about you, but the teams, I'll go over the five teams in this conference that I think are going to be players and are really going to be movers and shakers and the really five best teams from the conference. And I think they're going to be Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Florida, and Georgia. I think these are the five teams that are really um, in the best position to win their respective divisions and the conference, and are the have the five best rosters. So I think uh, for starting, I think for the West, I think Alabama will win the West, even though they only return 11 starters. Their backups are all five-star recruits. Best coach in the country. I think they'll run the table. I think they'll go 12-0, win the West. I think this year, unlike last year, I don't think they'll be as dominant as they were. I think this year it's gonna be much similar to 2014, where we know their offense and they're going to rely very heavily on their offense a little more than their defense. Even I think their offense is going to be the one leading the way almost, because their defense is very inexperienced. They got a lot of great players, but they are definitely losing experience from the defense. So I think they'll go 12-0. I think their two toughest games are Auburn and LSU, and I think LSU is only going to lose to Bama, and then I have Auburn with its 15 returning starters going 8-4, but I think they'll be a lot better team than their schedule. Um, I mean, their record will show. I think they have one of the toughest schedules in the entire country. I mean, they got to go to Clemson, they have to go to LSU, they have Georgia at home, and then they have to go to Bama again. Um, I just think those are 4 games they're going to lose. But I think they'll be within one score of every one of those games, and I think they'll definitely those 3 will definitely be the best 3 teams from the conference. What about you, Elam?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I still feel like SEC West is dominant. SEC East, I mean, yeah, I mean, Georgia is obviously a super talented team, but I mean, that seems to be the case every year. I mean, they have one of the most talented rosters. They always do great at recruiting, but they always seem to kind of screw it up, or like they're plagued with injuries, and so you never know like what's actually going to happen with Georgia. I feel like talent wise, they're like right up there with the Bamas, the Auburns, the LSU's, but I think overall the SEC East is still kind of weak. Still not really sold on Florida as a team. Quarterback play always an issue. They'll be reliable on defense, but besides that, I can't really count Florida as one of the top contenders in the SEC. So yeah, I'm going to totally agree with you. I mean, I think Alabama's going to win it. LSU, they got a Heisman candidate, Darius Geis. I mean, I think he's the best running back in the country. I know you think it's Saquon Barkley from Penn State. I think Geis is actually the best one, but I think he'll carry them the whole season. There really aren't any like alarming games to me on LSU's schedule besides Alabama and Auburn. I think LSU will beat Auburn and probably go 11-1. I would agree with you. I don't know if they can go into Tuscaloosa and pull out a W. That's a very tall task for any team. I'm not very confident saying that they will. So I definitely agree with you. I think Bama, you got Hurts coming back. He's gonna be much more seasoned. Bo Scarborough, hopefully his leg injury is healed up from the national championship game. He could be a Heisman dark horse candidate, honestly, just depending on how his season goes. I mean, he's one of the most imposing backs in college football, so I'm interested to see how that goes. But I do agree that Bama lost a lot on defense, and I think their offense will carry them this season.
I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
With Bama, I think even more that they got the great running backs, absolute stable with Bo Scarborough, Damian Harris, and Najee Harris, top recruit in the country. But I also think they got really good receivers this year. They got
Calvin Ridley,
who's Amari Cooper light. But then they have their freshman Jerry Jeudy looks like an absolute stud. He had a huge spring game, had like over 150 yards, like 7 catches. And not only is Jalen Hurts more experienced, I think he's really getting pushed at camp. Tua Tagovailoa is an extremely good player. Had an amazing spring game, totally outplayed Jalen Hurts in the spring game as a true freshman. First couple months on campus, totally outplayed him. But I do think Hurts will end up winning the job. Will definitely win the job because of experience. But I think this competition will only push them to be better. And as far as the East, I agree Georgia is always talented, but I actually think this is the year they should put it together. Granted, we say that every year. I do too. I mean, I live here in Dogs Country. But they returned 17 starters, 10 on the defense. And the guys that lost on the defense, they can be easily replaced by their top recruits, Richard LeCounte or D'Angelo Gibbs. And I think their defense is going to be one of the better defenses in the country. And they got Trent Thompson up front. Will be definitely I think will be the best D lineman in the entire SEC. Their whole team will just hang on the development of Jacob Eason and the O-line. They're only returning 2 starters on their O-line, but they have have some talent, and they're really just going to be asked to run block all game long. And most O-lines can run block. They have the best 1-2 punch at running back in the entire country with Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. And it seems Nick Chubb is finally 100% going back to 100 yards every game. So I think this actually will be the year they finally put it together, and it helps that Florida is finally down. They're going to start true freshman at quarterback, Felipe Franks. They lost a ton on the defense, lost both corners. Right, Duke Dawson's still a really good player. C.C. Jefferson's very solid. I just think they're going to be down. Tennessee's going to be down. But I think South Carolina is definitely going to be up. South Carolina, Jake Bentley, they played extremely well. Muschamp's got that defense going pretty well. So I think the East isn't going to be as good as the West, but I think the East is going to be better than we've seen in the last couple of years. And I think that would be led by Georgia, who I think Georgia's going to go 11-1. I think they'll lose at Notre Dame. It'll be really tough with them at Auburn, but I think they'll pull it out. I think they'll just get behind. They've had their number the last couple of years, and I just think they'll have Nick Chubb carry them to victory. And I think this is the year they'll get Florida, because Florida's starting true freshman at quarterback. They just suspended their best running back for the season, the starting running back. Lost a lot on the defense, so I think this is the year they'll finally get them. So I got them going 11-1. I got Florida going 8-4. I think they have also an extremely tough schedule. I think they'll lose to Michigan, lose to Georgia, lose to LSU, and lose to Florida State. I mean, those are 4 really good teams. So I think even if Georgia does lose to Florida, they can afford the loss, because I don't think anyone else in the East is going to have as good as a record. So I think a 10-2 Georgia, 11-1 Georgia is very reasonable this year, and very likely, well, most likely win the SEC East. But I do think Bama will beat them in the SEC championship. I don't think Jacob Eason will be developed enough to take on Alabama's defense. So that's where I stand with the SEC.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, it could be the year Georgia puts it together finally, but like I said, we don't know. I feel like we say that every year. I think the big thing is how will Jacob Eason play. It's still yet to be determined if he can really be the guy to put the game on his shoulders or anything like that. But, he's still young, got a lot of time to develop. So we'll see how he gradually progresses. So we're both...
So I think we both have a 13-0 Alabama coming out of the SEC.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And let's move on to the ACC now. So...
All right.
What I like about the ACC, there always seems to be a little bit of parity in the ACC, where you have some of the weaker teams beating some of the better teams. I know last year Pittsburgh knocked off Clemson. I believe North Carolina beat Florida State. Louisville almost lost 2 games. Almost lost to Virginia, and then had a close game against Duke. So there's a lot of competition in the ACC, which I like. However, I think this year Florida State is really the power here. I mean, you would agree their defense is probably one of the best in the country, if not the best. They have Derwin James, and arguably the best player in college football. So I think Florida State's really going to, they could win out. I don't see them winning out. I mean, I see it's a possibility. I think they'll drop to Bama week 1, but then after that, they could honestly run the table. My only question is, can they go into Clemson and win that game? What are your thoughts?
So, yeah, I think I'm very high on Florida State this year. I think you say possibly best defense. I think they definitely have the best defense in the country. They have the best, and I think they definitely have the best player in the country. I think Derwin James is an absolute beast, and I think he's closest thing I've ever seen to Sean Taylor. And it's not even just him. Their secondary's got Devers McFadden, who led the country in interceptions last year. They have Trey Marshall's also extremely good safety. They got Josh Sweat, Derek Nandi, DeMarcus Christensen. They got everything on the defense. It's Justin Pugh. I think it's definitely the best defense in the country. And I'll make a guarantee. I think Florida State will definitely beat Alabama at least once this year.
So you're saying they can meet up in the college football playoff?
I think they will lose the first game, because the one weakness of Florida State is their D-line. I mean, their offensive line. And week 1 going up against Alabama, that's as hard as a matchup as it can get. So I think they'll lose that one, but I think over the year they're gonna this talented group, and I think over the year they're gonna eventually just start gelling, because a lot of the O-line plays chemistry and seeing things together, communication. So I think over the year they'll start growing and get more experience. I mean, they have everything now. So they got Jaquez Patrick, who's going to start the year at running back, but I think Cam Akers could very easily be even better than Dalvin Cook. I mean, he's much more powerful back and still can move in space almost extremely well. And I think DeAndre Francois is an excellent quarterback, probably the toughest guy in all of college football. And I think they will run the table after this, after the week one loss to Alabama. I think they'll run the table. I think they'll go into Clemson, and it'll be a defensive struggle. And I think their defense is one that could actually score points too. So I think that's going to be the edge.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, Florida State's really the team to beat in the ACC this year, without a doubt. We know with Clemson, I mean, I know you're very high on their defense as well. I know you talk a lot about how awesome their defensive line is. My question with Clemson is just losing Deshaun Watson is huge. That's huge for that team. They still have weapons on offense. Deion Kane, got Leggett at tight ends. I mean, they still have weapons, but how can you come off losing? I mean, for 2 years in a row, Deshaun Watson could have won the Heisman, honestly. So how do you replace that, and how do you just go into the season knowing that you just lost one of the best college football players that we've seen in a while, and how do you replicate all their success that they have had the past 2 years, which is 2 national championships in a row? So
yeah, they are in. It's interesting because they're kind of having a rebuild. I think Kelly Bryant has been named the starter for week one, but I don't think he'll keep it. I think Hunter Johnson will eventually take it. But with that said, I don't think the next year Hunter Johnson will be the quarterback. I think Trevor Lawrence from Cartersville, Georgia, is eventually going to be the heir apparent to Deshaun Watson. And I mean, the way they do it is they have all the weapons. They have Tavian Fester, C.J. Fuller, Ray McLeod, Deion Kane. They have a ton. Hunter Renfro, who I think is a young Julian Edelman.
R.I.P.
They got all the weapons and they got the defense. I think no one's going to be able to run the ball. They got the best starting front four in the entire country. Dexter Lawrence, Christian Wilkins, Austin Bryant, Cleveland Farrell. They got returned 2 of the 3 linebackers, and the one stepping in as a former top recruit from my local high school, Trey Lamar. So I think their defense, they'll have to rely on their defense, and they got a great quarterback and coordinator in Brett Venables. So they're going to rely on their defense, get the ball out of the quarterback's hands soon, and get it to all his playmakers on the outside and let them do all the work for them. So that's how they do it. They don't put so much on the quarterback like they did with Deshaun Watson, ask him to do everything, but they get it out of his hands, rely on the playmakers. They're not going to score as much at all, but they don't need to. Their defense is going to be extremely good, so they're going to have to rely on that. And I think they'll go 10-2. I think they'll lose to Florida State. And then I think they'll lose to NC State. I think NC State is going to get a little revenge off of last year because NC State should definitely have beaten them last year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was the freaking field goal kicker. I mean,
yeah, 30-yard field goal that right in the middle of the field, the kicker missed. And, I mean, they have one of the best players in the country in Bradley Chubb. They have a great defense, a very strong defense, really good running back in Jalen Samuel. So I think NC State, and it's on the road at NC State, I think that will be a definite loss for Clemson. And then actually we'll throw in Virginia Tech as a possible third loss for Clemson. But I think a rebuild at 9-3, 10-2, that's how you know your program's elite right there. And I think Clemson has definitely jumped into that elite category. So I think it'll still be a very good year for them. I mean, it's not going to be what they were, national championship with Deshaun Watson, but they shouldn't complain too much because the future looks extremely bright for Clemson.
Absolutely. I mean, Dabo's doing great things with that program. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, they got one of the best recruiting systems there in the country right now. Seem to be landing all the 5-star recruits. So just moving right down the line. So Florida State, Clemson, Louisville. Obviously, I'm a Louisville fan. Got to throw them in.
Yeah, I'll let you take this one.
I mean, it's just, you got to look at it from a realistic perspective. They're not going to go into Florida State and win that game for sure. I think they have Clemson at home this year in Papa John Stadium, so that's kind of a toss up for me, to be honest. I feel like Clemson obviously out talents Louisville. However, I think they'll want revenge for last year because that was a very winnable game for Louisville. I'd say they kind of, I don't want to say they threw the game. I don't like saying the teams threw the game. I want to give Clemson credit where credit's due. They took it from them. So I think revenge is on the mind of Louisville. Like, it's very similar to last year. Very early game, they played Florida State and dropped 63 on them, and that's like never been happened. That's never been done at Florida State. I mean, historically one of the greatest programs we've ever seen. So I think that'll be an interesting game. I'll chalk it up as a loss for them, and then at NC State again, like you said, it's a Thursday night game. Stupid things always happen on Thursday nights. Louisville's probably going to drop that one. Louisville is notorious for losing games on Thursday nights. Rutgers, Clemson, just to name Miami.
Florida State.
Florida State. I could go on and on and on about the games they should have won on those Thursday nights, and then something happens and they just seem to blow it. So Thursday nights haven't been too friendly for Louisville. I'd say they probably go 9-3. I think that's a pretty realistic prediction. I don't think it's anything crazy. We do have Lamar Jackson coming back, obviously, off the Heisman season. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to replicate what he did. I feel like the expectations are just going to be so high, and we already saw towards the end of the season with defensive lines like Houston and teams that had time to scheme up against them, like LSU in the bowl game. I mean, Lamar Jackson was literally just rendered useless and completely ineffective, and so I think a lot of that had to do with predictability with the offense. There were definitely a lot of sets and a lot of motions where I could 100% tell where the ball is going, if Lamar was going to keep it, what kind of action was coming out of the backfield. So I think if they improve on that stuff, it might make it a little bit easier. But, got returning players, Reggie Bonifon, Jalen Smith, the receiver. Defense really still kind of stacked. We got the secondary. Jair Alexander is one of the best corners in the country. You got Trumaine Washington on the other side. Got Zacchaeus Cannon, he's a really good player. Stacey Thomas, anchor in the middle. Still got Drew Bailey playing D tackle, really making plays for us, clogging up the middle. And then we got our boy, Mr. James Hearns, coming back from a minor leg wound from getting shot at the party. So hopefully he's getting his act together. And don't forget, with Trayvon Young's coming back, he actually had a very good season 2 years ago, but he actually dislocated his hip against Texas A&M in that bowl game, which actually sat him out all of last season. So he's supposed to be back in the lineup, and he's been killing it in spring ball. I mean, no tackle has been able to really stop him, and that might not be saying much because Louisville's offensive line is still dreadful. They're still young, a lot of inexperience. So that's going to be the key. I think the offensive line is really going to have to step up. Otherwise, it's going to be a long season when you're coming up against D-lines like Clemson's and Florida State's and just teams where there isn't much room for error if they're going to make a push for the ACC championship. Do you have any other thoughts about that?
No, you obviously know Louisville a lot better than I do. I think the key to stop really Lamar Jackson is you got to have the players. I mean, the games they lost, they played against teams with outstanding athletic front sevens. That's what you need. You need athletic front sevens that can run around, keep them in the pocket, force them to throw to the ball. And I mean, I think Clemson has those guys. Florida State has those guys. I'd love to see Derwin James versus Lamar Jackson in the open field. That'd be,
oh my gosh,
that'd be an amazing sight to see. NC State's got Bradley Chubb, who's an absolute beast. Who could. I don't know if they have all the horses, but they definitely have one of the best.
He would wreak some havoc for sure.
Yeah. So it's all about having the guys. If you have the guys who are athletic enough, I mean, you saw SU Arden Key probably just as fast as Lamar Jackson almost, and he's 250, 240 pounds. So that's the key to them. So the last team in the ACC I kind of want to talk about is Miami. And I think Miami will win the Coastal Division. I got them going 10-2. I think they'll lose to Florida State and Virginia Tech. But this is a team definitely on the way up. Mark Rick is doing a great job there already. I mean, they had great contributions from freshmen last year. Their defense, they got a stud at every level. I mean, they got R.J. McIntosh at the D line and Shaquille Quarterman as their linebacker making all the plays. Amon Richards, one of the best receivers in the ACC without a doubt. So this is a team that has definitely got a great future. The only issue is I think they're starting Malik Rozier as the quarterback as a freshman, redshirt freshman. So that's the only thing really keeping them from being an elite team is their inexperience at the quarterback. So I definitely think they'll win the Coastal. I think their defense is going to carry them, and I think they'll win the Coastal at 10-2, 10-2, 9-3, around there, probably 10-2, and lose again to Florida State in the conference championship game.
Yeah, I mean, Miami. I like that Miami is starting to get back into it's good for college football for Miami to be good. I mean, that's what I always remember from when I was younger is the great Miami teams, the great Florida State teams. I think it's really good for college football, and so I'm glad to see Miami is really getting back up there. So we'll move next to the Big Ten. I'll just kind of go across the country that way. So we'll do Big Ten, and then we'll do Big 12, and then we'll finish with the Pac-12. So the Big Ten, obviously, like the two main teams, Ohio State, Penn State. Those are honestly a toss-up for me this year. I think last year Penn State probably deserved to be in the college football playoff, but obviously the committee did not see it that way. I think there's a little favoritism there. We won't go into that. But I feel like, honestly, I could see either team beating the other. I just think the X factor is that the game is in the horseshoe, so I would give the nod to Ohio State, but I know you obviously have a different opinion.
No, actually, I do think Penn State will lose to Ohio State, but I like Penn State better, and it pains me to do it. It's just wrong team, wrong place. I think Penn State's a better team and the team I would want to see to win the conference and make it into the playoffs. But I don't think they'll be able to beat Ohio State at Ohio State in the horseshoe. And I mean, Ohio State, I think. So I have Penn State going 11-1. I mean, they got Saquon Barkley, who's amazing. Trace McSorley, Mike Gesicki, absolute matchup nightmare out there with at tight end. Sade Blacknall. I mean, this is a good team. They returned 16 starters, most in the Big Ten, and I really wanted for them to. I thought going into it before looking at schedules, like, okay, this is a team I expected to win the Big Ten, but just looking at the schedule, I just think they're not going to be able to beat Ohio State in the shoe, and Ohio State. I don't think Ohio State is as good. I just don't think Penn State can win that game in the shoe after, especially what happened last year. I think Ohio State's going to want that revenge, and I have Penn State 11-1. I have Ohio State at 11-1. I think they'll beat Oklahoma early in the year, but I do think it is finally time. I think Michigan will beat them. This is at the Big House. Michigan will make them one-dimensional. I still really question JT's Barrett's ability to throw the ball and the passing game in general for Ohio State. And I definitely don't think their running game is going to be as explosive and diverse without C.J. Samuel there. I mean, Curtis Samuel now with the Panthers. So I think that high-end speed is going to be more just ground and pound. I think it'll be a very similar game to what we saw when Michigan State finally beat them 2 years ago. I think Michigan will finally beat Ohio State, but I still think Ohio State wins the East because I think they'll have one loss. I think Michigan's going to have two. I think they're going to lose to Penn State. I think they'll lose to Wisconsin, both games on the road. They're an experienced team. I don't think it's going to travel necessarily greatly, extremely well. So I got Michigan at 10-2 from the East. I got Penn State 11-1 at the East, and I have Ohio State 11-1, winners of the East Division, and eventually winners of the Big Ten. I think they'll beat an 11-1 Wisconsin, who will win the West. I don't. Wisconsin is a team that I wanted to say they would go undefeated, very similar to Iowa a couple years ago, but I just don't see it's happening. I can't really tell you what game I think they'll lose to. They'll lose. I think Iowa, BYU, or two of the ones to look at. But I just think they'll lose the game. Just college football. Sometimes you can never predict that game they'll lose, and so I think they'll win the West. But I do think Ohio State will beat them in the championship game and win another Big Ten championship. What do you think?
Yeah,
Hey, lad.
I personally think Ohio State's going to go undefeated. I think they're going to run the table. I I don't think Michigan's going to beat them. I think Michigan's down. I think they lost a lot with Darboh and Butt. I think Jake Bowe is one of the most underrated players, offensively in the country. Like, that guy is good. Had it not been for his injury in the bowl game, he would have probably got drafted much, much higher.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see Michigan beating Ohio State. I'm not a huge Buckeyes fan. However, I respect them. That's a great program. Urban Meyer, he's got it down pat. Like, he knows how to win. He knows how to coach his players. So I think they're going to run the table. They're going to go undefeated. They're going to win the conference. I would not be shocked, however, if Penn State did beat them in the horseshoe. I think it's too tall of a task. So I would just give the nod to Ohio State, and like you said, Wisconsin, such a weak schedule. They could easily go undefeated, but it's college football. They're gonna drop one or two somewhere along the line. So I guess we both agree Ohio State's gonna win the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So now moving along to the Big 12. Now this one, I think it's
a horse race. I think.
You say four, I say.
Two horse race.
Oh, you said two. Okay, I'm sorry, I misheard you.
Yes.
I was like, I don't know about that one. I think it's safe to say it's Oklahoma State. Those are the 2.
Mm-hmm. I think West Virginia will be a pretty good team, solid team with Will Grier quarterback. I just don't think they have the talent to match up with Oklahoma or Oklahoma State.
Nor the defense.
For the long haul of the season, I do actually think West Virginia will beat Oklahoma State as a little track game before the Oklahoma game. But other than that, I think they'll drop 2, maybe 3 games. So, what do you think about the conference?
I'm never high on the Big 12. I think it's a weak conference.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
It's so predicated on just offense and shootouts that it hurts to watch at times. And I think, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are the 2 teams only worth mentioning because obviously Oklahoma, always one of the best rosters in the country. Always. Somehow they always manage to screw it up. Stoops, I don't know what the hell he does half the time, to be honest.
Well, now it's Lincoln Riley's turn to screw it up.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just I don't know where the culture is there at Oklahoma. It's for such a storied program. I feel like there should be so much more pride, and I just don't see it at times. I think now Baker Mayfield, I think he's a pretty good leader. I think he's a very fiery player. He's a very talented player. I think he's someone that team could come around and really lead them to win the conference. But I also think that Rudolph over at Oklahoma State is just as good, if not better, than Baker Mayfield in my eyes. And they got one of the best receivers in the country, James Washington. So it's hard to say. I think it'll just come down to which team is more sound defensively. I think either team could run the table in the Big 12. I also think that the winner of that matchup this year between Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, I don't think that will really determine anything in the long run because I think both of them will face each other again at the end of the season in the Big 12 championship in AT&T Stadium at the end of the year. So I think that first matchup against the two, it'll be a good chance for them to kind of feel out each other, and it's still early in the season when they play. So
Hmm.
I think ultimately, in the end, in my eyes, I think Oklahoma's going to come out on top, just because I don't know. I like Baker Mayfield. I like him. I think he's a player that I would like to be around. He really, he's very passionate. He's a guy that I could, really get behind and support and have him lead my team. Rudolph, obviously, I think is a little bit more talented, just as a pure passer and a quarterback. But I just don't know what to expect really from Oklahoma State's defense, because, like we saw last year, I mean, they were like super iffy. They dropped a bad one to Central Michigan, so they didn't run the table at any of the year. So I'm not sure what to expect from the Sooners,
Hmm.
really, nor the Cowboys. I think Oklahoma will squeak it out in the end, though.
Yeah, so just real quick in Oklahoma State's defense, that final play against Central
It
Michigan
shouldn't have
was
counted.
illegal. So they
Yeah,
should have won that game.
true.
Um,
But I don't think they should have been in that position.
mhm. So I think Oklahoma State wins the regular season matchup, and they'll finish the regular season 11-1, and Oklahoma will finish at 10-2. I mean, Oklahoma State's they got the advantage of having the best offensive weapons in the country. I mean, they got Mason Rudolph, and James Washington are two big names. They also got a really good running back, Justice Hill, and Marcel Aitman is definitely an extremely good number two receiver. So I think they'll benefit from just having just as overwhelming offensive firepower in the first game, and having it be uh, a home game for them. I think that will give them the edge in Bedlam. I mean, Bedlam's always crazy. So I think they'll win the first game and essentially win the regular season title, Big 12 title, but I think they'll lose the rematch. And I have more confidence in Oklahoma's defense than I do in Oklahoma State's. So
Yeah, I would totally agree with you there.
I think in neutral site, I think Oklahoma's the better team. But because the first game is in Oklahoma State, I'm giving the edge in the regular season to Okie State, but I have Oklahoma winning the conference at a final record of 11-2.
Yeah, I yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I mean, I think Oklahoma may win both. I
Hmm.
think, like you said, I think neutral site. I think Oklahoma will win, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if Oklahoma State wins at Boone Pickens. I mean, it is a home game for them, so they should be
Hmm.
expected to win. So now that we're out of that offensive shootout country, we'll move over to the Pac-12, and this is Lennon. This is your territory. This is
Hmm.
your pride and joy. So I'll just let you go on here.
All right. Well, I'm first going to cover my team. Uh, I love my Ducks as the great music video. So, I mean, I really like Willie Taggart. I really like what they got going on there. Last I checked, they had the number one ranked recruiting class in the country for 2018. Granted, they have that by having um, so many more recruits than anyone else has at this stage. And their top recruit is rated at like 40th player in the country. So they don't necessarily have the top tier recruits, but just to get that many recruits committed to go all the way to Eugene, because I mean, let's face it, there is no real serious high school recruiting coming from the state of Oregon. So most of their talent has to come from out of state. They already got a lot from Florida. They already got um, a lot from California, a couple other from the East Coast, one from North Carolina. So I really like the future they have. And I mean, they're returning a ton of starters. They returned 17 starters, which is third most in the country. Justin Herbert is an extremely good quarterback. I really like his future. I mean, huge, 6'5", cannon of an arm. He's more mobile than you would think, than he looks. And I really like the future he has. And then, I mean, I think Royce Freeman is easily I mean, he's extremely underrated because he didn't have a good year last year. He was hurt a lot, playing behind um, four freshmen on the offensive line, four redshirt freshmen. So it wasn't the best situation for him, being hurt, not really having a passing game because they didn't really have a reliable quarterback. So I mean, we have great running backs. We have Royce Freeman, who I think will be definitely going back to his 1,500 yards, quite very easily back up to 1,800 yards rushing. And then we also got Tony Brooks James, we got Kenai Benoit, um, and we got Taj Griffin. Granted, he's playing a little more slot now. So our offensive line is going to be really strong. We got Tyrell Crosby, and along with we got essentially the whole line returning. We got three redshirt sophomores. Tyrell Crosby's back. We got Jake Hansen, who's absolute extremely good center. Shane Lemieux, Calvin Thorpe-Martin. So our offense is going to be really good. The question with Oregon lately is our defense. I mean, very easily the worst defense in the country last year. I mean, we have an absolute stud in Troy Dye. Ed Oliver, Taylor Rapp, Sean Gary get all the credits as the top true sophomore defensive players, but Troy Dye is right up there with them. And Dexter Lawrence, about him. So I think this year is. I'm really gonna like what I see out of them this year. I think they'll go 8-4. I think they'll definitely lose to Stanford, definitely lose to Washington, probably lose to Washington State. And I think their fourth loss will either come against UCLA or Wyoming, and both on the road. They do have a pretty tough schedule actually, and they got to go to Washington, go to Stanford, go to UCLA, go to Wyoming, Nebraska coming in week 2. But I think they'll manage 8-4, 7-5 at the absolute worst, and coming off a 4-8 season, I'll definitely take that. I think it's moving in the right direction. So 8-4 is what I see for Oregon, and then. For the Pac-12 real contention, I think there are 4 teams really to talk about. As far as the South, I think it's USC, and that's it. I think USC will run the table in the South. I think they'll handle Notre Dame. I think their toughest game by far will be against Stanford. But I do think they'll come out on top on that game. So I think they'll finish the South 12-0, undefeated South winners. And then the North, I think you got 3 teams. I think first talk about is Washington State. I think Washington State will right now I have them at 9-3. I think they'll lose to SC and lose to Stanford. I think those are the 2 definite. And right now I think they'll lose to Washington. Granted, I think they're a team that could take advantage of what Washington lost. Washington's going to have still a really good defense. Front seven's going to be absolutely loaded. I love Greg Gaines. I love Vita Vea, Jalen Johnson, great players. But the secondary, the corners in particular, are the ones who are really going to get stressed in Mike Leach's air raid offense. They got great safeties, Taylor Rapp and JoJo McIntosh, but the corners are completely unproven. So I think Washington will pull it out, but I do think that'll be a really tough game for them. And that would be Washington State could very easily pull that one off. And then, going back to Washington, I think they'll finish 11-1, and I think they'll lose to Stanford. So I think Stanford will win the North at 11-1. Only lost to SC at SC. So I think this will be. I think we'll have a rematch: Stanford versus SC in the Pac-12, and I do think SC will win again, coming out of the Pac-12 at 13-0. What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't see anyone knocking off USC, to be honest. I mean, Washington.
I think Stanford's definitely the best bet.
Yeah, Stanford is the best bet. I would agree as well. I don't think I'm not really high on Jake Browning. I know you're not either. They
Hmm.
lost John Ross. I mean, I don't see any
They
team
still got
competing.
They still got a very good weapons. They got Dante Pettis, Chico McClatcher, Miles Gaskin,
Miles Gaskin, yeah, he's really good.
Le'Veon Coleman. They got they. I think though my issue with Browning is he can't stretch the field. I think he's got friggin' jello for an arm. Um, so I think the Washington Stanford game will be very similar to last year's game, where um, real physical game. But this year, I think Stanford is going to be the one to out physical Washington. So that's why I like Stanford in that game.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't see any of them really giving
Challenge
USC
Nestle.
problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think they're by and far the most talented team, and I expect them to run the table. Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, going back on your Ducks, I feel like I was gonna say 8-4, 7-5 as well. Um, I do. I'm very high on Royce Freeman. I hope he can stay healthy. I think he'll be the second or third best back. I think in my opinion, I'm not gonna say Chubb because I don't know how healthy he's gonna be coming off his knee injury. So we got Geis, Barkley, and Freeman. Those are like my top three backs in the country, and so I'm excited to see how he looks when he's healthy and now that the offensive line has a bunch of experience.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you hit it on the nail. I mean, USC is going to run the table. I think they're going to come out of that. Sam Darnold, I think, is arguably one of the top Heisman candidates. I mean, he's super talented. He's got the
Hmm.
weapons. I think he's going to crush it this season. So, yeah, I feel very comfortable with saying USC is going to run the table in the Pac-12. So, let's just kind of go into the end of season stuff, some of the more fun stuff. Let's talk about little bit about players. So, who do you think is going to win the Heisman, or who do you think are the top contenders in your eyes?
So I think top contenders. Sam Darnold, he's got all the attention, so the media's gonna be following him everywhere, and it's extremely hard for West Coast players to win the Heisman unless they go to USC. So I think he's got that huge USC hype train moving. They run the table. It's gonna be really hard, and he plays outstanding. It's gonna be really hard not to give him the trophy. I think Darius Guice will carry LSU all season. Um, I like Mason Rudolph and Baker Mayfield, both of them. But and I, if I were to give out the Heisman, I could give it to best player. Derwin James goes out there and plays like I think he can. I'd definitely give it to him. I think he's got a real shot at possibly winning it. And but I do think it'll end up going to Saquon Barkley. I think what we saw at the end of the year from Saquon Barkley was just outstanding, and I think he'll be able to improve on that. He was playing against a very shaky O line last year. O line's going to get better, more experience. Connor McGovern, center is the anchor of that O line. So I think Saquon Barkley is going to carry Penn State, and if Penn State goes to the Big Ten title and makes the playoffs, I think it's a done deal. Saquon Barkley wins it, no question. If they don't, that's where it gets definitely a lot more close. Sam Darnold has that the hype train, the team performance backing him, but I like Saquon Barkley to walk away with the trophy.
Yeah, and don't
What about
forget
you?
he was playing on a limp ankle, wasn't he, at the end of the
Hmm.
year? And he was. I mean, I was just in shock at how well he was playing. I mean, it just shows you how passionate he is. So I think that could very well carry him to the Heisman. And performances like that are when your teammates are like, "Wow, if this guy's balling out on a bum ankle, like that's the type of guy that you really want to have as your leader, and that will inspire your team." So that's why I think Penn State could, they very well could go in the horseshoe and beat up on Ohio State. But I think I'm with you. I think Sam Darnold, USC, they have like what, like 6, 7 Heisman winners, like the most or something like that. So I
Hmm.
feel like USC guys are always some of the favorites. Depending on how Florida State season goes, I think DeAndre Francois, you can't forget about him.
Hmm.
I think he's gonna have a pretty good year. I'm still not totally sold on him as a passer, but he got beat up last year really bad, and now he's had a year to improve. And really kind of start to settle in at the end of the season. So I'm excited to watch him play. I think don't forget about Bo Scarborough. He had that excellent performance against Washington last season. I
Hmm.
think he'll be able to really start coming out of his shell, and I think a big problem for him was just kind of letting the game slow down instead of just pounding it up the middle because he's just a physical beast. So I think
Hmm.
with a little bit more experience, he could be a very explosive player. And obviously Darius Geis, I'm really high on him. I think he's a super good running back. I think if LSU has maybe a 10-2 kind of season, I think he's in the race. I think I think he'll go probably, in my opinion, because LSU has always been a historically run first team. I think he could hit 17, 1,800 yards. I don't think that's a crazy number to hit for him.
Hmm.
So I would probably say Barkley, Darnold, and Francois are probably my top three. Throw Geis in there as well. So I think any of those guys could win it. I don't think Lamar Jackson's going to repeat this year. No one's done it in like what 40 years or something like that. So
Yeah, like 42 years.
yeah. So I don't think it's going to happen again. Like I said, I think teams are going to be able to snuff out Lamar Jackson. I don't think he's going to be able to replicate his numbers. And that's not me just being a pessimist. I'm just being real. That's just what I saw. That's the
Hmm.
trend. That's the trend you see. The last one to kind of get close was what Jameis. I think he came in like sixth in the voting his second year. So I think it's just so hard because after you win the Heisman, you got all eyes are on you, and you got to hit even higher expectations than the season before. And what Lamar Jackson did last season was just ridiculous. So I don't
Hmm.
think he's going to be able to replicate that. So I don't really have him in there. So last kind of thing we'll touch on is let's just go ahead and talk about the CFB, the national championship. Who's your 1-4 matchup?
So 1 and 4, I got Bama at 4. I mean at 1. Uh, and I have Florida State at 4. Rematch of week 1.
That's interesting. I have the exact
Hmm.
same one.
Hmm.
So what what
And
do you
then
what do you think happens there?
I said at the beginning, guarantee that Florida State will beat Alabama at least once this year. I think Florida State will win that game. I think their O line will mature. That defense is going to be firing on all cylinders. Um, I mean, this will be defensive showdown, and this is one of the few times in the last 5 years where you can say Alabama, without a shadow of doubt, probably does not have the best defense in this game,
Nope.
and I think Florida State has the better defense. I would probably say a better quarterback. I like DeAndre Francois more than I like Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen Hurts is more definitely more of a runner than a thrower, and I think Francois is more of a thrower who can run. I mean, he can run extremely well too. So I think Florida State's got the defensive edge. They got the quarterback edge. Um, I like Florida State in that game. And I think it'll be an amazing game, very similar to that Ohio State Bama game a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean,
So
this is a toss up for me to be honest. I think these are two of the best teams in the country. Obviously, I could see it going either way. Just for the sake of being devil's advocate, I'll just say Bama. You know,
hmm.
I couldn't give you a particular reason why. I do like Francois more than Hurts. I think Francois has a lot more upside, especially as a passer. I think where Hurts really excelled is getting out of the pocket. We saw against LSU last year, he was fairly limited in what he could do. So I think that'll be kind of similar situation with Florida
And
State and their
Clemson.
defense and
Yeah.
Clemson. Yeah, I mean, I think Florida State could win. Like I said, if Florida State could win, Alabama could win. I really don't have a very educated opinion.
Hmm.
I think it's a toss up. So I'll just say Bama, just for argument's sake. And
Hmm.
so what's your 2 and 3 matchup?
2 and 3, I for sure we're the same again. I got SC Ohio at 2 and Ohio State at 3. I think even though Ohio State and Florida State have the same record, and Florida State only lost is to Alabama, I think Ohio State definitely has that strength of schedule, having beaten Penn State, Oklahoma, Wisconsin. Um, their only loss on the road at the Big House. I think that's gonna hurdle them over Florida State, whose big wins will be Clemson, a rebuilding Clemson, Miami. So I don't think they'll have the same marquee wins. So that's why I have the Ohio State at 3 over Florida State. But I think USC will win this game. I like this would be a um, great matchup, old classic Rose Bowl matchup. Pretty sure the game is in the Rose Bowl too, so that'd be even better. But I like. I think this will also be a really good game because the one concern I have about USC going on this year is also their offensive line, and they will be going up against Nick Bosa,
Sam Hubbard.
yeah, Sam Hubbard. I mean, they're going up against a great D line. So I do like SC to pull this one off, pull this one out. Again, because I think USC will be able to force Ohio State to be one dimensional, and I think Ohio State doesn't have enough of a passing attack to really take down these top teams unless it's at the shoe. So that's why I like USC in this game.
Yeah, I have the same matchup. I have Ohio State at 2 and UC at 3. I have Ohio State running the table, going undefeated, but I will. This one I actually am fairly confident. I'm pretty sure Ohio State's going to win this matchup because you hit it on the nail. I think Ohio State's defensive line is freaking good, and they're deep. And I don't know if USC's O-line can put up with it. And I think that's going to be really where the game is won. I also like JT Barrett's experience over Darnold's. I know that JT Barrett isn't the best passer, and he's proven time and time again that he cannot consistently hit open receivers or hit them in stride. So I I think, when it comes down to it, I just like his leadership. I like his experience. I think he has all the intangibles, and I think he won't let Ohio State lose. I think when it comes down to it, he'll put the game on his shoulders. He'll come out on top. I think Mike Weber's a really good back. I think he's going to be huge in that game. I think Ohio State would go ahead and win that, but primarily because I don't think USC could handle the Ohio State D-line, who will be very, very tested in a much tougher schedule than USC had throughout the season.
So you have Bama, Ohio State. I mean, that would probably make for the best ratings. Good old Nick Saban versus Urban Meyer. That would, I'm sure, that's the college football playoff committee's dream scenario for the national championship.
Right.
So that would be good. And I got Florida State, USC. So who do you have, Bama or Ohio State?
Uh, Man, I couldn't tell you. I'll go with my gut. I'll say Ohio State. I think JT
Okay.
Barrett. I think I like the guy. Maybe not so much as a player. Like, I don't think he's gonna necessarily excel at the next level at all. But I like him. I think he's gonna finish his. I mean, he's had a pretty good career at Ohio State, and I think he's a fan favorite there. And so I think it'd be cool for him to go out on top. Like I said, I'm not a huge I don't really like the Buckeyes by any means, to be honest. But I think it would be cool for him to go out on top, and I think he will really put himself in a position where he won't let his team lose. Um, you know, I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, he's gonna act like Tebow did back, against Oklahoma and just not let his team lose and will them to victory. But I think it's that kind of scenario where he's just gonna refuse to lose. I think Alabama, like you said, their defense isn't as good as it used to be. They're going to be heavily reliant on offense, and I think that will be a problem because that's where I think Ohio State really cancels them out. So I'm just going to give the nod to Ohio State. Like I said, not a very confident decision by any means. I think this year with all the powers going up against each other, it's really hard to determine. Like last year, Bama versus Washington, that was such an easy pick. I mean, I don't think Washington was ever going to give them a problem. So I I'll just say Ohio State. They're gonna come out on top. They'll hold the trophy up. JT Barrett, Urban Meyer raising up another one.
It's interesting because I mean we have very different opinions about JT Barrett. You think he's the reason they're going to win it all, and I think he's the reason they're going to lose. It's very interesting. So I got my championship. I think Florida State defense wins championships. I like Florida State over USC. Um, that's a really tough one. I was extremely tempted to pick SC. I don't know. I'm just kind of going based off trend in the last three college football national championships. The lower seeded team has won the game, so maybe this trend continues. We both have it continuing. But I like Florida State. That defense, I think, is extremely good. Got studs. They're loaded at every position. I think, like I said, continued by this year. The O-line is the one weakness of Florida State. And I don't think USC's defense is really going to be in position to really test that like Alabama's would. But back to Alabama, they don't have the depth up front to really test it all game long. But I don't think USC has the D line to really make them pay for having the lackluster offensive line. So I really like Florida State. I think Florida State can match up with USC. They got the athletes to run with them. They got Josh Sweat, Justin Pugh, all the names I've mentioned before. Derwin James. I think this will be. We'll look back at this and say like this is one of the probably better defenses we've seen in college football for a while, as they're just going back to that 2011 Alabama defense that beat LSU in the championship game. I think it'll be a defensive led effort, and I think they have an offense that can go protect the ball and do what they need to do. But I think the defense of Florida State will lead them over USC.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to make a pick for that game, I would pick Florida State as well. I mean, that defense is just fast. Like that is just fast, and that's always what's scary. So, yeah, I think either way. I mean, I don't think we can go wrong with either four of these teams, honestly.
I think, yeah. I mean, something to my matchup real quick, then I'll talk about yours. Is something I always see when I see Sam Darnold play. Who reminds me the most of is Brett Favre.
Yep, gunslinger.
He's a gunslinger. He throws these really awkward footing, 3/4 throw, starts moving around and just throws it. In college, generally the players aren't good enough to capitalize off the gunslinger mentality. So it really plays to his advantage to do that. Versus, I think Florida State's got the guys who will be opportunistic enough to make him pay for being a gunslinger. I mean, they have the nation's leading. DeVaris McFadden led the league and led the nation in interceptions last year. They got Derwin James, who I've said before, and I'll say it all year long, is probably the best player in the country. And Trey Marshall's no slouch either at safety. So I think they can definitely make Sam Darnold pay for his gunslinger mentality. And for your game, I think Bama would win that. Back to what I said about our different opinions about JT Barrett. So, but that would be a great game, great ratings. It probably had the best ratings of all the games. So maybe the only one that could possibly beat is SC Bama. But that would be that'd be a great matchup to see. Great defenses going at each other. So.
Absolutely. So that's all we have for you guys today on this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Just kind of a quick run through of the college football season, kind of what we expect. Obviously, with college football, I guarantee you everything we said is going to be incorrect, purely speculation, but we love to talk about it. I know you guys love to talk about it.
Especially if it's 2007 again.
Absolutely. Don't even remind me. So,
is worse for me. Trust me.
Oh, I know, buddy. I know. But all right, that's all we have for you guys today. So
Yeah.
if you guys
So
have any comments or anything like that,
mhm.
please leave them in there. If there's anything we can improve on, anything you want us to talk about, anything you like, if anything you disagree with, agree with, kind of leave that in there. You have anything else to add, Connor?
Yeah. So we'd love to see your Final Four. Let's see your Final Four and who will eventually win the national championship. So our next episode will come out next week. We'll do our week one takeaways from college football season, and we'll spend most of the time doing an NFL preview and division winners, make our postseason picks, and so on and so on. So thanks for joining us. You stay classy, YouTube,
But have a nice day.
but mainly you stay classy.